Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. Every hour, two people in the UK are told they have Parkinson's. There are 153,000 people currently living with Parkinson's in the UK and 8.5 million globally. One in three adults, that's just over 16 million people, not just know someone with Parkinson's, like I knew someone who had Parkinson's, my late grandfather, but as a personal connection to it. So that's why it is personal to me. 1 in 37 in the UK are predicted to receive a diagnosis of Parkinson's during their lifetime, and it's being urged to the UK government to make an investment urgently to find a cure for Parkinson's. Now, our guest today is talking about Kindred Spirits, Think Loud for Parkinson's, which is going to be released on the 14th of February this year, and it sees a plethora of British rock legends which have teamed up to raise awareness and funds for the charity Cure Parkinson's. The album features all new and previously unreleased tracks. But our guest today is Tony Butler. Tony Butler from Big Country, The Pretenders, Pete Townshend. He anchored some of the most enduring British pop hits of the 1980s with bass passages that were instantly recognizable and as memorable as the melodies and lyrics. I'll let him talk about it because it's his journey, not mine. Even though it's a personal journey. Welcome, Tony, to the journey.
Nice to be here, David.
You're welcome. Now, I touched upon Parkinson's, and that's the purpose of mainly why you're here today. But we also like to talk about you. But what kickstarted your musical career as per se?
Oh, Christ. I've got myself so in tune with Parkinson's, I forgot about myself. Me, well, I don't know. I just wanted to be in a rock and roll band, really. I grew up in West London, reading Melody Maker, New Music Express, thinking that's the kind of job I want. Sort of being papers, standing up in front of loads of people with a guitar, making a noise and being praised and paid. And I thought, I could do that. But when I sort of got a grip and decided that what my future was to be, I was actually going to be a journalist when I was made to see sense. But when I was at school, I sort of started playing in bands and stuff, and I just wanted to sort of, I really enjoyed this. And one of the first bands I joined was a band that featured some kids from the Ealing area that I didn't know much about. And even more to my lack of knowledge, two of the guys in this group had an incredibly famous brother who I didn't really know much about. And I just went round the house one day and I started sort of jamming with these guys, and it seemed good. This guy walked in and picked up a guitar and started playing quite badly. And I said to my friend Simon, "Who's that?" He says, "Oh, it's my brother Pete." And I kind of go, "Oh yeah, what does he do then?" "No, he plays in a band. He plays in the U." And I thought, "God, I haven't even heard of them." So I was a bit green and wet back. But no, I ended up in the household of the Townsend family. And I grew up with Simon Townsend, his Pete's younger brother, and his lesser younger brother, Paul. And I was part of the sort of Townsend backdrop for many, many a year. And I learned about rock and roll through hanging out that house, and just knowing, getting to know what it was like to be in a band. And I really liked it, but I decided to sort of keep with my schooling and get my exams and stuff like that, but still playing all along. And we went from group and being a little group, little local group, into being a slightly bigger group. And after many years, we sort of ended up in a lineup which included myself, Simon Townsend, and a drummer called Mark Brzicki, and we were playing in a band called On the Air. And we got an opportunity to sign to Warner, WA Records, which is part of Warner Brothers. And we got put on a tour with the band called the Skids, and we spent 2 weeks trekking up and down supporting this band. And to me, I mean, I had a one particular favorite guitarist, which was Jimi Hendrix, but the guitarist in the Skids I found equally as fascinating And I just thought, well, how can somebody make their guitar sound like that and play with such passion and energy, and the music be so kind of ebullient and striking? Uh, a year later, I ended up, myself and Mark got a call from this chap called Ian Grant, who was managing this group called the Skids, asking if myself and Mark would come and do a session with them just to see how it all worked out. And Big Country, as we all know, it was formed, and we went on from strength to strength to incredible, incredible things. And I never really looked back, but I still had a, I still count the Townsend family as a great inspiration to make me do what I did. And
Mm.
after, just before I joined Big Country properly, I got an opportunity to play bass with the Pretenders due to the death of Pete Townshend. And I went into the studio with Chrissy Hind and the drummer. Oh, can't forget his name. Anyway, we went on to record a single called I've forgotten that as well. Back on the Chain Gang. There you go. Back on the Chain Gang, which was a hit, and the but as I was joining Big Country, it kind of had. I'm not sure if I really had a choice, to be honest, but if I really wanted to, I think I could have pushed to get a sort of permanent place with the Pretenders. But my inkling was Big Country because I was able to sort of play the type of bass that I wanted to play in the style I wanted to play, and join a creative force that was not just spaced around one person. And
Yeah.
Chrissy Hind is the Pretenders, and whatever Chrissy does is brilliant in my book, but not something that I would like to be part of the creative
Mm.
effort. So, I put all my efforts into Big Country, and we went on to have the career that we did. And but also, not too long after the Pretenders, I actually went into the studio with Pete Townshend to record his first solo album, which is called Empty Glass, with the guy who produced the Pretenders, which was Chris Thomas. So, yeah, it all sounds like it's getting quite incestuous, but it wasn't that like that really, but it kind of felt like it. So I was being introduced to rock and roll from very, very many different corners, and
And being in a relationship in singers and bands like that, you say it's incestuous per se, but it's not. It's about a big family. And if you are connected in a certain way to one person, you connect with another. It's about interconnection. And I like
it
that.
is. It's definitely about interconnection, and I Empty Glass. I mean, which was a complete and utter honor to work with Pete. Honestly, it was a it was an eye opener at how you know things worked in the fast lane. Um, we went on to work with Chris Thomas on the first Big Country album. So again, another connection, but that got scrapped. It didn't work for some reason. There was no connection between Chris Thomas and Stuart Adamson and Bruce Watson. They just didn't gel. They didn't get on. Which is why we went on to work with Steve Lillywhite, who was a genius, full stop. It was a pleasure to have him on board. It was a joy to work with him. What we came up with was too exciting for words, and it's as if all my living ambitions and dreams all manifested. When we finally left the studio with our master tapes with what was to be the crossing, and it just went from there.
Yeah, and I've assuming you've worked in the Abbey Road studios, so that is one of the experiences that some artists or bands never forget either.
No, well, I mean, just a slight correction there. I've never worked at Abbey Road.
No?
Worked at Rack Studios. We did a lot of recording at Rack Studios, which is in St John's Wood, which is just down the road.
Hmm.
But all of my music career, I've been there, but I've never worked there. So that's one little thing that's passed me by. But hey, it's a recording studio.
And that's
I'm
how
sitting.
I look at it from my perspective as a new, professional podcaster stroke when I was on the radio. You get excited when you see Abbey Road Studios. Yes, you get excited when you see the famous crossing, but at the same time, It's like I say about people who claim to be celebrities. I say you're not a celebrity, you're just being you. So that building's just a building that's just attached to.
Yeah, I mean, for the musician, the new musician like me, when going into these studios for the first time, I mean, it's like, if you're uber religious, you walk into a church that's fantastic, and it just fills you with all sorts of emotions that make you want to do your best, and I think that's what these places were designed to do, to make you want to do your best, because that record's going to go out to a public who will spend hard-earned cash to relish and adore you.
Yeah.
So there's a payback to it. So yeah, I've never been in a recording studio that I haven't actually felt as though I was in some sort of enlightened sanctuary where you can produce your best. So yeah, I'm in mine now.
So celebrating the album's release kill for this is going into what we're talking about and the main purpose. Kindred Spirits, Think Loud for Parkinson's. There's going to be a launch party at Cure Parkinson's in the office headquarters in London on Wednesday the 12th. Members of press are invited to that, obviously, and they have got their invites.
Mm.
But all profits from the album will help cure Parkinson's, as it says in bold, cure Parkinson's. To fund vital creative research into Parkinson's, the fastest growing genetic neurological condition in the world. And as you heard me say in the intro, it's close to me because my late grandfather, he had Parkinson's. He got diagnosed it later in life.
Mm.
But what's your personal connection to Parkinson's and what is your belief in this album to help people understand the album more?
Well, my connection to Parkinson's is the fact that the forever manager of Big Country, who's the curator of this particular Kindred Spirit album, chap called Ian Grant, is a Parkinson sufferer, and I've watched him suffer now for the past eight or so years, and it's been a nightmare. It's been horrendous, and my heart goes out to him and his family, and I've seen him deteriorate after being such an ebullient, larger than life music industry type managerial type of person. In fact, I think I quoted him in a music industry paper once. I called him the Svengali manager of rock and roll. You know, that's how he is to me. He's very rock and roll, and he's very much a music industry person. And to see that light sort of flicker and then sort of start to sort of dim has been a real challenge for me as just as his friend. And when he decided that he wanted to try and help the charities in some sort of way, and first muted the Kindred Spirit single, um, I don't know why I didn't get involved from a recording point of view. Um, but latterly, before they put the single out, they did one of these flash videos, and he just asked me to make a contribution, so I did it as well. So I was part of that. But I knew immediately after doing that he will one day bring me up saying that he's going to do an album, because that's what Ian Grant did. He came up with ideas, and 9 times out of 10, he saw them through. I thought this would be a real challenge for him because um, I know what it's like to try and get involved with sort of charity drives and awareness drives because in the late 80s, my former wife and my daughter, who was only 8 at the time, both had ME. And I kind of went down the same route. I went to charities which would relate to that type of illness because it was such a scorned upon type of scenario that people didn't know, people couldn't identify when people had it and such on. So it was very difficult, And I went down, I did a charity single for it, but I just felt as I was sort of beating my head against the wall. So once that was over and done with, I kind of left it, as did the rest of our family. My former wife had it for 4 more years, my daughter had it for 2 years, and then after that, we all kind of left it behind. So when I was talking to Ian about doing the Kindred Spirit album, I kind of reminded him of the malaise that he was going to get from people getting involved purely
Mm,
and simply because what they call charity fatigue.
yeah.
that was going to raise its ugly head at some point. But I said that, whatever you do, I'm happy to be involved because I'll always help them out.
Yeah.
Um, and then I got sent a couple of tracks, the first initial tracks, which I played on. I can't remember what they were, but I did them because I could got my home studio and I did them here and I sent them back, really happy with it. And then it went quiet for a while. And next minute, Ian's ringing me up and saying, nobody's interested, blah, blah, blah. He's having that kind of malaise thing. And then a little while later, I'm getting these emails from him saying, "Oh, this person's got on board, and that got." And I think Leo Sayer was a big catalyst
Yeah.
to his endeavours to get people involved, and he relied on a few people he'd been involved with managerially before he got ill, and then people started slowly getting on board, and all of a sudden now he's got an album which he's completely and utterly curated on his own, and I can't nothing but respect for the guy because
Yeah.
at the end of the day he's done all this. Why he's not been able to communicate properly because his speech has been incredibly tarnished
Mm.
by Parkinson's, and to have a telephone conversation with him is a very difficult thing, and it's difficult for him. So, I've got a lot of respect for what he's done, how he's gone about it. And me knowing him, I kind of knew that he would get through it and get round it somehow. So, I'm sitting here today doing interviews to promote this album out of pride for him. But at the end of the day, it's all, I think he'll get as much pleasure out of this as if he would if he didn't have Parkinson's. But I
Yeah.
think because he's got it, he now knows that he's got support. There's people willing to listen. There's people he respects willing to get involved and listen. I mean, I gave you my story about Pete Townshend and his family earlier on. Um, Again, I can't believe that Pete Townshend made such a huge contribution to getting this album made. Apart from not playing on it and blah blah blah, but it's indicative of the man. So once again, the circle comes round my way with certain people.
Yeah, and props to him for actually going strong and p keeping on pursuing it because he could have gave up when it was at that little stage of, I can't do this. But he pursued it. He had the backing of people coming, and I'm looking at the track list now. You got Leo Sayer, you
Yeah,
got Tony Adderley, you got John Cooper Clarke, you got Mike and the Mechanics, you got Bob Reston. I'm just saying a few just to summarize, but these songs. So I've said some song titles, White Shade of Pale, Eleanor Rigby, How Long, I Can't Stand the Rain, Pink Cloud, which is the main title song.
yeah.
It just shows that the
Quick,
community of,
just a quick anecdote about the Think Loud track. I mean, after being managed by Ian Grant for all these years and having him sit down and sort of get very introspective about any new song that the band used to come up with in preparation for an album. For once, I find the tables turned because he wrote the lyrics for Think Loud.
wow.
So, it was like kind of poetic justice that I could sit down and analyze his lyrics rather than the other way around. So, but
Yeah,
again, he was motivated, and I think and it's very much part of the mantra of Think Loud because it's something that I've learned since talking to Ian about it, that if you think loud, it's the best way to communicate. And when you've got a speech problem, I can see why that is such an integral part of making yourself understood.
yeah, I truly get that as well. Because, like I said, and I often do relate to this when it's coming to this sort of situation. My
Mm,
grandfather, yeah, he was a really verbal, communicative guy. First few years he had Parkinson's, he was okay. He had the odd fall and he got taken to hospital. But in later life, towards his death, in 2005, as it got progressively worse, he was always sleeping more. He was less communicative. If he did talk, you had to really go up close to him because it's either a whisper or and you had to think loud and you had to think, what's he trying to say?
mm,
And the difficult thing is, it's often a misconceived. like, what did you say? And you have to say that.
Mm,
And that's the difficult thing. And when you are older, and they say young, older stroke younger because you are still young per se, but the older you are, the more progressive Parkinson's is.
mm,
No, I don't know how old Ian is, and I don't want, I'm not trying to be critical of his age, but it seems like it's progressing in such a way that it's progressing really quickly.
mm.
And I just feel bad, but at the same time, he's got support, which is good. He's doing something which is encouraging support, and having you part of it is support as well, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I feel very proud that I'm sort of doing, being a good friend. That makes me feel happy and supportive, as you say. So, and he's done enough for me during his lifetime. So it's nice to be able to do something uh, that it's not just to help. It's helping the whole concept, and we because we're in a sort of almost in a fatigued world of a lot of things. I mean, people got life fatigue at the moment because of the shit that's going on in the world. It's people don't really want to be knowing about other people's problems because everybody's got problems anyway. But we've got to keep going. We can't stop. I mean, it's just because there's a few barriers, you don't let them just stand in the way. You just push them out the way and try and get through.
Yeah, and over the last few years, you talk about the crap that's happened in life, and COVID is one. Now, I had COVID. You probably know people who've had COVID. You might have had COVID, but it still carries on. The world did stop for that time, but it
Yeah,
carried on.
it does. Yeah, and you know, and again, I appreciate the fact that you said from the beginning this is not just about the main topic of discussion here. I mean, although I'm a retired person, I'm still an active writer.
Hmm.
I, I don't perform. I have nothing to do with the music industry. I'm a completely solo artist, and I do my own recordings, and I have my own record label. And I've just spent 3 years writing an album, which I can only describe for those who know Big Country and Steel Town. Steel Town was a reflection of life at the time. My next album is about the reflection of the last 3 years, and I've called the album No. I've called the album No. Sorry, I got something in my throat. No Profit in a Peaceful World, and it's my view of how things have been in the last 3, 5 years. We're not living in a stable world. We're not living in a nice world. There's people who are actively, forcefully making, wanting to make our lives a misery. So, with that backdrop, to try and find room for awareness is part of the battle of life, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
There's shit going on, but even through the shit, you've got to make the real things in life. You know, life and death is cheap these days, according to some people. But whilst we're still alive, let's try to make it worth something, and let's make it an experience that we were all born to have.
Yeah, I truly reflect that.
So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going to do next. But there's not a lot of difference between what I do, what I'm doing, and you know, an awareness project like Cure for Parkinson's.
Yeah, and for the people watching, listening, the website is facebook.com/Cure Parkinson's. It's also on X, which is Cure Parkinson's T, Instagram Cure Parkinson's, and there's also YouTube. But I'll make sure the links are in the description
Yes.
afterwards. And for the small print, Cure Parkinson's is the operator name of the Cure Parkinson's Trust, a registered charity in England and Wales and Scotland, and a company limited by guarantee in England and Wales. And I'll make sure that's included as well, so we know that's covered. So, last of all, because we only got half an hour, and I know you probably got other interviews lined up, but you've out with the awareness of Parkinson's, but also you've been on a journey yourself, which you touched upon.
Yeah.
You're now retired, as you called it, but
Hmm.
what would you say to people? Because you touched upon Jimi Hendrix, who's also a brilliant guitar player, but what would you say to people on their musical career to help them feel good to say, I'm on a journey now?
After Stuart Adamson passed away, I, I I really didn't want to be involved in the music industry. The band were what they were. We were an original, fantastic British band, and I certainly didn't want to sort of see it, sort of be diminished by carrying on because we want to be rock and roll stars. We want to try and earn more money. I didn't really want to do that. So I kind of left the business and I went back to university and I got myself a teaching degree in order to go and teach music industry, basically, recording, technology, business, management, a whole lot. And I found myself a job in North Devon, which was a degree course, and I found myself doing what I think a lot of industries do: teach kids about their industry, and the great myths and mystiques of the music industry, things like music publishing and management and percentages and stuff like that. People should know, the basics, and that was my role in that.
Hmm.
Screwed by this industry. I mean, I won't go into detail, but you know, out of ignorance. I made it a real point of my life with Big Country to make sure that I was involved in every aspect of the business so I could see what was going on and be aware of it. And I still got screwed. And I'd like to think that my teaching, when I was doing it, I was bringing some very basic tools to a toolbox to enter a business, enter an industry that, if you were successful, you could do very well. But if you were successful but ignorant, you'd end up on a shit heap. And, it was my ambition to sort of try and sort of do that. But I had to retire from that around 2015, somewhere like that, due to problems with my legs and so on and so forth. So I kind of thought that my sort of working life was over, but can't help but write songs.
It's the instinct in you that you always want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I love writing songs. I spent a lot of time, you know, working with people who wrote great songs. I mean, I'm one of the few people who've worked with Pete Townshend and Ray Davies, who, in my mind, are the two greatest British songwriters ever.
Yeah.
I've worked with them both, and I feel really privileged to have done that. But I still got my own thing that I want to do, and I really enjoy it. But what it does is that, when you've got a bit of a canon going on, you think, well, I'd like people to hear this. Then you get pulled in, you get tempted again.
Hmm.
But what I've decided to do is I'm just going to do it very piecemeal. It's not about making loads of money. I'm doing it all myself. I'm financing it more or less myself. I've got a crowdfunding thing going at the moment, but I've engaged what I call a pop-up management to try and help me
Yeah.
get the message out and so forth. And the crowdfunding is to pay for that. But essentially, it's just me doing what I want to do, but I'm not conforming to the industry because I really don't like it.
Okay. But just like to say thank you, Tony, for sharing your journey with us today. Thank you for raising awareness for Think Loud for Parkinson's. I know it's going to be a busy time for until up to the 14th when it's released, and that's 14th of February, and I would assume it be on most platforms. There is going to be a link in the description as well, which will give us a teaser for people to watch on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for your continued success. Thank you for being you, and thank you for sharing your journey with us today.
You're very kind. Thank you very
And
much.
now,
Thank you.
a message from Amy. Amy, it's over to you.
Hello, I am Amy Harrison. I'm the author of the book Feline Warrior Part 1 and Part 2, a fictional story that is written in a poetic format that is based on real-life events that could happen to anyone and intended only for relatable purposes. This story claws into Catgirl's past abuse. Catgirl is human and part feline, but truly a warrior who can handle anything because she is strong and fierce. She has been taken advantage of for far too long. Join her on her journey as she reaches freedom. Here are some poems from Feline Warrior. Tears flow. I no longer know what to do. I am no longer who I once was, and it is because I made a choice to use my voice. And that is okay, because what I had to say was true, unlike me and you. Now I see. I am free. I am me. I am Catgirl. Ultimately, be you. Always stay true. Do what you want to do, because every day is made new. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later. The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.